So let's get started by introducing our panelists. So Ian and Ryan, the industrial Internet of Things is really creating an entirely new era for manufacturing, for condition monitoring, facility management, and supply chain management. I wanted you to start off by maybe helping answer an initial question around how are advancements in wireless connectivity changing the outlook for what the smart industry is and or what the smart industry could be? Ian, why don't you start off?
All right, can everybody hear me okay? All right. Again, my name is Ian Fountain, and I work at National Instruments. I'm a director in our product marketing organization, and I work specifically in the field of the industrial Internet of Things. For those of you who may not have heard of National Instruments, we're about a $1.3 billion company headquartered out of Austin, Texas. We've been around for about 40 years, and our focus is on industrial test and measurement applications. And so we got our start about 40 years ago in the laboratory, working with engineers and scientists to help them test the products that they were making and ensure that they were up to the requirements that their target customers had. And over the past 40 years, we've expanded into a lot of different areas, including measuring and testing wireless protocols like Bluetooth. But what I'm here to talk about more today is how National Instruments is thinking about using wireless technology in some of our industrial data acquisition products that would oftentimes find themselves in factories, power plants, oil refineries, and the like. And so one of the areas that I'm going to speak about a bit today is in the space of condition monitoring, which is one of the areas that I focus on. We've had a lot of experience in this space. We've been working with customers on this application for about 20 years. And for those of you that aren't familiar with condition monitoring, the basic concept is that if you have an industrial asset, think about a pump or a motor or a turbine. Many of the ways that historically people have operated those industrial assets is to run them until they break. And of course, that is a very costly approach to doing business because you have unplanned downtime. You can no longer produce what it is that you were producing, perhaps. And if you break things, it can cause a lot of damage. It can be very dangerous as well. Imagine if a turbine blows up. That could harm a lot of materials and a lot of people. And so what the industry has focused on doing over the years is to learn how to make measurements to ascertain the health of those assets. And recently, what they've started to recognize is that the cost of making those measurements is starting to really fall because we can start to think about having sensors and data acquisition equipment that are permanently with the asset, and so that the people who actually are in charge of understanding the health of those systems, they can spend more of their time analyzing the data and less of their time collecting the data by having to walk around with formerly very expensive instrumentation. And so it's that shift that's causing National Instruments to look at wireless, because if a customer wants to put a piece of data acquisition equipment permanently on their asset, they have to oftentimes install large amounts of cabling and conduit and infrastructure to support that data acquisition equipment. And that cost of cabling and conduit oftentimes dwarfs the cost of the actual data acquisition systems themselves. In many cases, it's between 4 to 1 to, if you're in a nuclear application, it can be 10 to 1. So the cost of the cabling and conduit will be 10 times the cost of data acquisition. And wireless helps avoid that. So that's really what we're looking at.
Okay. Ryan, why don't you introduce?
So I'm going to respond and then introduce myself, because Ian's absolutely right. The connectivity ensemble is changing. And more so now and over the course of the next 5 years than we have seen up to this point. And it's happening on several different fronts. 5G was one of them, but we're talking about the other direction, or the other side of things. The reason I mentioned 5G, though, is because this is really about the entourage effect of all these different connectivity technologies coming together and creating a connected solution that's much more effective and efficient in the way that it operates. So something like Bluetooth is really pivotal when it comes to not just retrofit situations, but also empowering your endpoints or your infrastructure to be monitored on a regular basis. Because there's a lot of conversation around edge as well. Bluetooth is a core and a key edge technology, especially Bluetooth 5 for mesh networking. We're going to be hearing a lot more about swarm computing in the future. Connectivity, though, is really fundamental to anchoring and enabling a lot of what we're going to see with more advanced analytic solutions, a lot of conversation around artificial intelligence, machine learning. Connectivity is core to this, and also it's essential that there is high reliability, not just connecting for backhaul, but also compatibility across different device categories. That's something that's incredibly unique to Bluetooth when we think about short-range wireless. Yeah. What's different, though, is that although we'll probably still think of Bluetooth as short-range wireless, it's really not that short anymore. We're not talking about that connection between our headset and what's in our pocket. This is all of the lights, not just in the room, but the building. And it's only going to get bigger. I'm Ryan Martin. I'm a principal analyst at AVI Research, and look forward to kicking things off.
I was wondering if you were going to get to your name. So thank you very much, Ryan and Ian. One of the things that I wanted to maybe address in the very beginning, and Ian, this is probably a good question for you as well, is that there may be some people out here that are from industrial applications, looking at industrial automation capabilities, and we know how harsh industrial environments can potentially be and complex they can be. And there may be sort of an elephant in the room in terms of, is wireless robust enough for smart industry applications?
So let me handle that in two phases.
Okay.
We definitely see wireless already, in many industrial spaces. So whether that's Wi-Fi or cellular, and we've deployed systems using both of those connection methods. When we talk about Bluetooth, I think our perception until Bluetooth 5 was that it wasn't necessarily ready for industrial applications. When we started to study Bluetooth 5 and really learn more about it, the increased power, that was something that was really important to us. And so we actually went through the process of proving it to ourselves that something like Bluetooth 5, which has amazing promise in a number of other areas, such as battery life and bandwidth that we were looking for, that it would actually work. So we put together a minimum viable product, just to get something into customers' hands. And to your point, we actually went out and did some site surveys with customers in industrial environments. Think about massive power plants or big manufacturing facilities, and there's no magic in wireless. If you have a huge metal boiler in way of the signal, it's not going to get through, and so you have to plan for that. But we did see quite amazing range and quite amazing reliability. Several hundred feet of range, which is more than enough for a lot of our customers' applications, because they're going to have 50 to 100 assets that they need to monitor within a few hundred feet of one another.
Yeah, and that means 50 to 100 technologies, players, companies, participants that you need to accommodate on a regular basis.
And also ensure interoperability. So we feel like, and we have customers which are willing to take that risk with us, because the promise is there. Again, the cost of installing cabling and conduit it really causes many of these projects to have a very unreasonable return on investment. If you look at a return on investment of 5 years, most companies won't sign up for that type of investment. So,
yeah, I've seen installations where you've had sensors on machines, but there's wires basically running up from that machine, stretched out over all of the girders trying to come down.
Absolutely.
And the installation time that it takes to put something like that in is far more than what you would potentially need in a wireless solution.
We actually had a customer who deployed traditional wired sensing technology to 10,000 of their assets. It was over 30,000 new sensors, and the cost of the cabling and conduit was $40 million out of the $80 million project. And so, that cost most of that cost could be avoided if wireless technology were available.
Perfect. Did you have...
It's crazy it's crazy to hear numbers like that, because if you can afford it, that's time we're talking about. Like the time it would take to do that, even if you can afford it, could be so burdensome, because then you have this legacy infrastructure that, sure, you don't need to pay a recurring cost for, but it's still antiquated, and it's not going to do what you need because it's not mobile, and it's not, you cannot upgrade it over time. So the modularity that's afforded by Bluetooth, I think is really pivotal when we talk about the Internet of Physical Things, which is what the Internet of Things is. We know Internet of Digital, PCs, modems, tablets, as Chuck was talking about. That is how we are typically accustomed to working with Bluetooth. This is the first year that there are going to be more physical first endpoints. So think of your manufacturing floor. Think of things that are typically maybe even not in there, because this is wireless stuff. This is not built in, or it's not bolted in, but more often we're seeing technologies brought in. And the scary thing is these are off-the-shelf technologies. So the nice thing about a mesh networking topography is you then have the ability, if you're an IT manager, to more effectively monitor and manage these different endpoints, because they're using common protocol, common standards, and they can all port into a common platform that deals with not just that connectivity technology, but others as well.
Okay. So we've talked, you started talking about a little bit about use cases and condition monitoring. So what are some of the early use cases that you're seeing in smart industry where wireless is really connecting against some of the pain points that industries might be hearing or feeling?
Mentioned condition monitoring, asset tracking is another one that, while NI doesn't play in that area very actively, certainly our customers are asking about it quite a bit. One of the companies that we work with a lot is Airbus, and they tell a story where they're in their factory. Their factories are huge, and there's certain assets which are required to manufacture the airplane, and sometimes those assets are misplaced because they don't know where in the factory it is, and that will literally slow down the production of the airplane. And so being able to locate that quickly is important. Another one that we are starting to see is certainly in the space of logistics, smart logistics and things of that nature. Again, not one
like
that NI,
shipping and that kind of stuff?
shipping,
Okay.
telematics. Again, not one that NI is very active in ourselves,
Right.
but certainly we see that developing. I'd say for us, we're really more focused in the spaces of asset monitoring and operations optimization. So a lot of times customers are trying to squeeze that last few percent of operational efficiency out of their process.
Yeah.
And in order to squeeze that last few percent, newer sensing technologies have to be applied.
Yeah.
And the way that they can apply those newer sensing technologies in a low-cost manner, wireless is a great candidate for that. Okay. So those are the two spaces that we ourselves are playing a lot in.
Yeah, that's very consistent with what I'm seeing. Because we're talking about a large market with a set of well-understood needs and slim margins. That's a place where technology plays, and that's especially a place where you should really start to think about connecting these different assets and maybe doing it a little bit quicker. This is a scenario where the river's always going to be running. It's a matter of when you get in. But the sooner you can get your assets connected and your endpoints connected securely,
right,
the more mileage you're going to get when advanced analytic tools are democratized and much more attainable.
Okay. So let's talk just, I think you touched on it a little bit before, but I'd like to address just pain points, right? What are some of the pain points that we're trying to address here? And I think maybe there's two different angles to think about this. One is pain points from a deployment perspective, right? You talked about the harshness of an environment or a boiler in the way. So there's pain points from a deployment perspective, but then there's also pain points that they're trying to resolve from a business perspective, from an operations perspective. What are some of the pain points that wireless and obviously specifically Bluetooth is trying to solve or helping solve for some of these companies that are involved in industrial applications?
So oftentimes our customers have some experience with wireless topologies and technologies that have been around for years. So proprietary 900 megahertz based technologies have been around for a long time. There's been some other standards that are very industrialized, like wireless HART or ISA 100. Those are technologies that they've kicked the tires on. But one of the reasons that we haven't made the investment to put products into those ecosystems is because one, we do like to leverage standards. So proprietary protocols isn't something we're really excited about. It's difficult for us to sell the IT department on the security strategy of something that we've done alone. It's a lot easier for us to try to answer that pain point when we say, hey, we've got the entire Bluetooth ecosystem standing behind us. Another one is bandwidth. That's something that Bluetooth 5 was really helpful in addressing. And so for us, our customers oftentimes, they're going to make a measurement, and in the past, the measurements could be made, but the data had to be reduced at the edge, and only a single data point, because there wasn't enough bandwidth, could be sent over the air. That's painful for them, because if they detect that there's a problem and they need more data, they have to send a person out to that asset with, again, a handheld meter to take more data. What our customers are asking for is an ability to solve both challenges, something that can let them know when there might be a problem approaching, but then give them that high bandwidth data, the full waveform of data. And so that's another challenge. And then the last one I would say is battery power.
Okay.
These customers, they don't want to have to go out and change the batteries on these devices once every 6 months. They're looking for 2 to 3 years minimum on these devices. So that's one thing that, to be quite honest, from a mesh networking perspective, we're a little bit afraid of, because if you get into a situation where mesh might be a great way to get around that boiler, it can cause one of your nodes to perhaps drain its battery more quickly, because it's acting as a gateway almost for several nodes. And so that's something we're a little bit apprehensive of.
All right. Well, one of the good things about that is that discussion is that we do have the chair of the working group that built the mesh specification will be on one of the panels. So maybe we'll be able to answer that question specifically with him. Anything else?
So I'll echo and maybe amplify a theme that was just brought out, and that is that innovation impacts people, process, and technology. We talked a bit about process and technology, not so much about people. That's where Bluetooth comes in. This is the technology that marries what we've known with what we will know, what's been in our pocket and what's going to be in the plant, and that high degree of freedom and flexibility that departments need to communicate and initiate action much more effectively.
Okay.
Broad, I know, but it actually is meaningful. It's real stuff.
So is there anything else you want to add as we move on for continue down the rest of the panels, and we'll have Q&As afterwards? Is there anything that we didn't talk about that maybe you want to just add on sort of where industrial applications are going, how the market is moving, and sort of what NI's position is, or National Instruments' position is, specifically in the industrial complex?
Yeah, in the previous talk, there was a discussion about it. There's a lot of proof of concepts happening.
Yeah.
And those POCs are failing because they don't have a tangible ROI. And I couldn't agree more. I think that people have to really think through what the application is, what their pain point that they're trying to solve is, and think through how they're going to calculate that ROI. And technology is just a small piece of how they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And so we've seen our customers that are able to calculate the ROI, and we talked to them. I mentioned that situation where the customer spent $40 million installing cabling and conduit. If we could have helped them reduce that down to, say, $5 million and use wireless technology, the payback period for their project would have gone from 4 years to 2. And that's a no-brainer for many executives to be able to say, hey, I've got a project that'll pay itself off in 2 years, and it's setting me up for savings in the future. So.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, now is what Bluetooth is transforming. Like, Bluetooth 5 is a really big deal. And I cannot overstate that. This is a technology that if you have ignored historically, give it another look. It's worth it. Because what Chuck showed leading up to this is very real stuff. Battery life's better. The range is incredible. And the integration and ability to integration with IoT and ability to uplift the real value that's going to be coming from it over the next few years is truly transformative, and I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We didn't consider BLE as an industrial standard until 5 came out.
Perfect. So we're going to we'll ask the next set of panelists to come up. I thank you very much for your time. We'll also do a Q&A at the end, so if you could just hang out, and after we're finished with the panel sessions, then we'll bring everybody back up. Perfect. Thank
Great,
you very
thank you.
much.